Confederacy, the American Civil War, was fought, and it was an act of rebellion. It was an act of treason at the time against the Union, against the Stars and Stripes, against the U.S. Constitution. And those officers turned their back on their oath. I've recommended a commission of folks to take a hard look at the bases, the statutes, the names, all of this stuff, to see if we can have a rational, mature discussion. I personally think that the original decisions to name those bases after Confederate generals, the 10 bases you're talking about in the Army, those were political decisions back in the 1910s and 20s and 30s and World War I, World War II time, for 100 years ago. And they're going to be political decisions today. The military equity here is divisiveness. And as you mentioned, cohesion. 43% of the United States military are minorities. And in the Army, for example, and these are Army bases you're talking about, we're up to 20+% African American, and in some units you'll see 30%. And for those young soldiers that go on to a base, a Fort Hood or a Fort Bragg or a fort wherever named after a Confederate general, they can be reminded that that general fought for an institution of slavery that may have enslaved one of their ancestors. I had a staff sergeant when I was a young officer who actually told me that at Fort Bragg, and he said he went to work every day on a base that represented a guy who enslaved his grandparents. So the symbols of it's not just the, we have to improve the substance of promotions, et cetera, in the military.
It is incumbent upon us today not to allow individuals to create fake arguments talking about heritage, a heritage of hate, a heritage of white supremacy, a heritage of dividing and seeking to divide this nation. It is our opportunity as a nation to remove the monuments and the names and the statues that uplift individuals who are traitors, as we've seen over the last several weeks, to truly voice our opposition and fight against structural racism, both in the public policy, both in private policy, but also in the symbols and images that signify structural racism or white supremacy. It's not healthy for this nation. It divides us. And I commend all who stand up to try to create a future that we all can be proud of, as opposed to a past that has divided us and created a really negative heritage for far too many of us. Must be clear that there is no glory in the heritage of being traitors to this nation. We should not celebrate any individual who took up arms against the country. As Africans in America during the Civil War, many of our ancestors picked up arms, reinforced the Union troop to ensure that there is one United States and not a divided states of the Confederacy and the Union. We should not celebrate a heritage of hate. We should not celebrate a heritage of supremacy. It is our opportunity as a nation to remove the monuments and the names and the statues that uplift individuals who are traitors and uplift those who are patriots to this nation.
The Christopher Columbus statue represents, in some ways, the Italian-American legacy in this country and the Italian-American contribution in this country. I understand the feelings about Christopher Columbus and some of his acts, which nobody would support. But the statue has come to represent and signify appreciation for the Italian-American contribution to New York. For that reason, I support it.
For all of the individuals who are seeking to make America racist again, who are seeking to maintain a racist society, it's time for the rest of us to organize a march to the polls in November. That's the march we need to have, marching for a future that's healthy, that's prosperous, that's inclusive, and all citizens have the opportunity to enjoy equal protection under the law, free of structural racism, free of demagogue voices, and an opportunity to join in to make this nation what it should be, not what it used to be.